We are anonymous. No faces. No flex. No permission slips. Donald Trump walked into the Oval Office expecting to celebrate a victory. Instead, in front of the entire world, he exposed a chaotic deal, contradicted himself repeatedly, and delivered what sounded less like a triumph and more like a public admission of defeat. What happened next was so embarrassing that even Trump's own claims began falling apart while he was still standing at the podium. The moment began with Trump announcing what he described as a historic agreement with Iran. According to him, the war was over, documents would soon be finalized. Vice President J.D. Vance and other officials would supposedly travel to Europe to sign a peace agreement. Trump stood there, attempting to project confidence. But what emerged instead was a series of contradictions, vague promises, and extraordinary admissions. Perhaps the most revealing moment came when Trump repeatedly pointed to the stock market as proof that everything he had done was correct. The stock market loves it, he declared. Think about that for a moment. Not international law, not national security, not congressional authorization, not diplomatic achievements. The stock market.
We have a signing maybe in Europe, and it's a great thing. Stock market's up 1,000 points. That means they like the deal. See, that means they like. If the market goes down, that means they don't like the deal.
Then came another remarkable claim. Trump insisted that the Strait of Hormuz was effectively already open and had been operating for months. According to him, American operations had quietly moved ships through the region without anyone knowing. He mocked reporters suggesting they had failed to uncover what he portrayed as a secret success story. Millions upon millions of barrels of oil he claimed had crossed the region. Numerous ships had passed through. Nobody could stop it. Nobody even knew about it. Yet if everything had already been resolved months ago, why was he now presenting a new agreement as a historic breakthrough? The contradictions piled up. A reporter asked the obvious question. Trump had previously claimed that the United States and Iran were close to a deal multiple times. Why should anyone believe this attempt was different? Trump's answer was revealing. Because Iran had taken a pounding.
They've taken a pounding. They've taken a pounding like very few people could take. And they want to make the deal a lot more than I do. And we could have had it done the other way, I guess, but it would have taken longer. They got hit very hard recently, as you know. And I don't like to have to do things that way, but I felt it was necessary. It's a great deal for the United States and for the Middle East, and I think ultimately great for Iran because they'll be able to build up their country and other country. I really believe it's a regime change because I find these people to be much more rational than the people that are no longer with us. We knocked out the first team of leadership, the second team of leadership. This is a different group, this is a different level, and I think it's frankly a smarter level, and it's a level that has reason.
Then came the issue of deadlines, or rather the lack of them. When reporters pressed Trump for specifics regarding when the agreement would actually be signed, he repeatedly refused to provide a firm timetable. Soon, he said. Very soon. Maybe Saturday. Maybe Monday. No deadlines. Why? Because if he gave a deadline and missed it, reporters would point it out. That was his explanation. This is the same Donald Trump, who spent years attacking others for missed deadlines, broken promises, and failed negotiations. Yet here he was openly refusing to establish measurable benchmarks for his own claims. And while Trump was celebrating a deal that supposedly already existed, reality delivered an inconvenient fact. Iran's foreign ministry publicly stated that no final decision had yet been reached. Even more importantly, Iran's supreme leader had not formally approved the arrangement. In other words, Trump was announcing victory before the other side had officially accepted the terms. Again, then came one of the most extraordinary moments of the day. At a political event, Trump declared that the United States had ended the war with Iran, not that negotiations were progressing, not that talks were underway, not that a framework existed. No. He declared the war ended. Today. According to Trump, Iran had agreed never to possess a nuclear weapon, and therefore the mission was accomplished. Yet when journalists attempted to clarify exactly what had been agreed upon, the answers became increasingly confusing. One reporter asked whether this was merely a framework for future negotiations. Trump responded by describing the arrangement as a very strong memorandum of understanding. Think about that phrase. A very strong memorandum of understanding. Not a treaty. Not a signed agreement. Not a binding international framework. A memorandum of understanding. Even Trump acknowledged it was somewhat conceptual. Somewhat conceptual. That is how he described the deal that supposedly ended a war. He insisted it would happen. He insisted everyone wanted it. He insisted numerous countries supported it. But concrete details remained elusive. And then, as if the entire spectacle had not already become surreal enough, members of Trump's administration began celebrating unrelated talking points. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick suddenly shifted attention toward fish. Fish. According to Lutnick, one of the great victories emerging from this moment was that Americans would eat fish caught by Americans. A massive victory, he declared. At a moment supposedly centered around war diplomacy and nuclear negotiations, administration officials were celebrating domestic seafood production. The absurdity was impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Trump returned to describing secret maritime operations. He enthusiastically recounted how ships supposedly crossed dangerous waters at night while lights were turned off and enemy radar systems were neutralized. Then came the numbers. 25, 22, 21, 26, 18, 14. Trump rattled them off proudly, portraying himself as the only person capable of remembering such statistics. It felt less like a presidential briefing and more like a performer attempting to impress an audience with random figures. Then the conversation took another dramatic turn. When asked whether Iran's supreme leader had approved the deal, Trump said he understood the answer was yes. Understood. Not confirmed. Not verified. Understood. Then came another major concession. Trump stated that once the agreement was finalized, the United States would lift its blockade measures as part of the arrangement. Again, this was presented as a settled outcome despite unresolved questions surrounding the broader negotiations. Finally, Trump turned to one of his favorite topics himself. He signed an executive order and immediately contrasted his actions with former President Joe Biden. Trump mocked the use of the autopen. He suggested Biden rarely signed documents personally. He ridiculed Biden's signature. He portrayed himself as uniquely capable of governing simply because he physically held a pen. As usual, the focus shifted away from policy and toward personal grievance, away from substance and toward spectacle, away from governance and toward performance. And that is the larger story here. The story kept changing. The facts kept shifting. The promises kept moving. That is why this moment matters. Because beneath the headlines, beneath the applause, beneath the carefully crafted talking points, the reality became impossible to ignore. Donald Trump walked into the Oval Office hoping to declare victory. What he delivered instead looked remarkably like an admission of defeat. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.